Now, you guys probably already know this, but there is no cooler genre of car than the fast wagon. You might not agree with that, but that's totally fine because it's totally okay to be completely wrong. But a fast wagon ticks so many boxes, but sometimes not all of the boxes. I'm talking about boxes marked reliability, cost of maintenance, fuel efficiency, stuff like that. Because see, as unbelievably and undeniably cool as the R36 is, Volkswagens of this era, they don't have the greatest reputation when it comes to reliability. But is that reputation warranted when we're talking this generation of Passat? Let's find out. Now, before any of you hardcore Volkswagen fans start screaming at me in the comments going, oh, it was available as a sedan as well, we know that, but the wagon outsold the sedan convincingly. Also guys, while in this video we will be focusing on the R36 primarily, we are going to be covering off a whole bunch of stuff on the B6 and B7 or the 2006 to 2015 Passat range as well. But besides the wagon and the sedan body stylings of the R36, when it was new, which was from 2008 to 2010, it wasn't just the flagship Passat model, it was the fastest accelerating Volkswagen available at the time. This was thanks to its Haldex 4Motion all-wheel drive system, getting the 3.6 litre V6's 220 kilowatts to the ground with minimal slip, not to mention near instantaneous gear changes thanks to the 6-speed dual-clutch transmission. Or as Volkswagen call it, the DSG. Although these DSGs at this age do have a few gremlins, but we'll get to that soon. As well as the sedan and wagon body styles for the standard Passat, there was also a slightly jacked up almost SUV all-track wagon model and a four-door coupe Passat CC. However, these are both pretty rare on the used market. Engine-wise here in Australia, the range featured everything from front-wheel drive 1.8 and 2-litre 4-cylinder turbo petrol 4s and 2-litre 4-cylinder turbo diesels, all of which will vary on power outputs depending on the trim spec, through to all-wheel drive 3.2-litre V6s and obviously the 3.6 in the R36. Plus, there have been no less than 15 variants spread across the 2006 to 2011 B6 pre-update and the 2011 to 2015 B7 post-update Passats. The 2011 to 2015 Passat revised pretty much every body panel and it received the expected updates to tech and features. However, under the skin, not a whole lot changed. Now, for far more details on the entire Passat range, jump on ReDriven.com and check out our awesome and completely free ReDriven cheat sheet. Just a quick apology about some of the audio. It's blowing a bloody gale and they've decided to mow the entire area. So if there's a heap of background noise or my hair's a mess, really sorry. Now, let's talk about looks for a moment. Did I mention that fast wagons are like the coolest genre of car ever? Isn't that obvious with this particular car? Especially because this one is wearing gorgeous 19-inch BBS alloys and it has been lowered just a smidge on some KW suspension, but I love the look of these. I love the whole R treatment around the front. Little things, like this little crease line, it kind of brings all of this together. These little wheel arch extensions, they're not like flares, but they're just smart enough to add some spice. Beautiful color as well. This is the Hero R color. God, I love the way these look. Silver mirrors, love it, love everything. But as good as this one looks, for me, the standard Passat range just looks a bit overly conservative these days. For me, just a bit boring. What do you think? Let us know in the comments. Now guys, if you love to throw your money away like a crazy person, feel free to skip ahead for a few seconds. But if you'd love to save a whole bunch of money when you're financing your next car and get a free $250 fuel voucher, click the link down there. That'll take you to Fast and Finance. Their entire purpose is to save you money when you finance your next car. Okay, in terms of interior design, in a normal Passat or a normal R36, the interior is starting to show its age just a little bit. It's still like classy and understated as we'd expect from Volkswagen, but it's almost like it's not old enough to be retro cool yet, but it's not new enough to be like, oh, that's nice and new and snazzy. However, in this particular R36, thanks to the owner fitting an aftermarket infotainment system, it really has modernized the entire interior and it looks fantastic in here. Now, as far as the materials that are used, really, really nice. You've got this sort of brushed aluminium finish everywhere through the center console and across the dash. Everything in touch is quite squidgy and nice. The Alcantara is really nice. The leather's nice. It's just a nice place to be. Now, ergonomics-wise, spot on. Driving position, excellent. Everything's in a really, really good place. These seats, they're spectacular. I honestly, these are some of my favorite seats that are fitted to any car. In saying that, I'm not the biggest guy, and I wouldn't want to be a much larger frame than what I am, because I am really firmly in here. So yeah, if you're copious of size, these might be uncomfortable. Personally, I think they're perfect. Now, as far as wear and tear goes in this particular car, this is this owner's everyday driver, and before he owned it, it was owned by a family. And wear and tear is pretty bloody good. Like even the Alcantara, or this suede finish, can sometimes get pretty nasty, but in this particular car, excellent. The leather on the steering wheel has lost most of its texture. That can sometimes be rejuvenated or restored. The bolsters on the seats, this is a big one on these because the bolsters are quite high and large. They do get pretty squishy and sort of messed up, which these ones have. Most of them have because people, like to get in and out of their cars and don't jump in them from above, so they kind of slide across and it ruins the bolster. Door cards, excellent. Even the sort of painted finish, there's not too many scratches here. What's awesome, there's no like gloss black plastic anywhere, so nothing is overly scratched up. Wear and tear in this particular car, spot on. Now, practicality up front, you have an excellent sized storage bin here, and that's got like an angle adjustment for the armrest. You've got a little slidey trapdoor here for your cup holders and extra storage. Plus, I know from experience that these little winglet parts will hold a small pretentious coffee perfectly, because I love my small pretentious coffees. Here you've got more storage, but this could actually be potentially used as a cigarette lighter and ashtray, but of course you wouldn't do that because smoking is disgusting, and only a fool would use that. You've got an excellent sized glove box there, really good sized door bins, and a spot for your sunglasses up there, and that's it for storage. Oh no, there's also storage here, really handy, and that's also felt lined if it's something valuable or if you want to polish it as it rolls around inside. Also, there's two little hidden storage shelves just up here either side of the hazard light switch, and they kind of come out to greet you in a very stylish manner. Okay, in the back seat, I'm exactly 13 centimeters taller than another very cool and incredibly practical German, Albert Einstein. This is in my driving position, and it's beautiful and lovely and wonderful back here. Heaps of legroom, heaps of footroom. It's just a comfortable place to be. The seats are great. Such a good car. Now, as far as wear and tear goes, as I mentioned before, this was used as a family car, and you'd never tell. The wear and tear is fantastic. Like the leather feels good, the Alcantara feels good, there's hardly any scratches on the door cards, the backs of the seats look good. So impressive. Now, practicality in the second row, you've got your own air vents, there's a power outlet here. The rear seats are heated, or the rear heats are seated. Fantastic. You've got map pockets on the backs of the seats if you use maps. You've got a pull down armrest which has, I love these cup holders. How cool is that? It's like Transformers. And also this whole middle section also folds down for more access to anyone you've abducted in the back. Now, practicality in the boot, obviously heaps because it's a wagon, but even the sedans are super practical, and also these seats fold flat, so yeah, all the practicality of a wagon in a performance car couldn't get any better. Also, if you decide to get rid of the spare wheel, heaps more space under here. Brilliant. Now, obviously with 15 different variants available over 9 years. What stuff you get in this is going to vary on the year model, the trim spec, all that sort of stuff. No matter which one of these you're looking at, but as standard, it's not going to have Apple CarPlay or Android Auto or any of that kind of really great phone connectivity. But as this owner has done, it's easy to fit an aftermarket unit which does have Apple CarPlay and Android Auto and all that sort of stuff. But in terms of what even the earliest base model specs of these will have, you'll be treated to an 8-speaker stereo, dual zone climate control, front and rear parking sensors, and this stuff, and so much more. But no Bluetooth in the early models. But move to a post-update and higher spec model, and you can expect leather upholstery, adaptive suspension, Bluetooth connectivity, and a premium and excellent sounding 250 watt Dyne audio sound system, plus all of this and more. Now, as far as safety goes, it's pretty good news for the Passat. Even compared to, more modern cars, it does pretty well. But to take you through exactly what safety features that you can expect, it seems only right that we do this next voiceover over like some traditional German folk music.
Zu den Sicherheitsmerkmalen gehören 9 Airbags, ABS, elektronische Stabilitätskontrolle, Traktionskontrolle und Gurtlastbegrenzer. Bestimmte Modelle können jedoch adaptive Geschwindigkeitsregelung, autonome Notbremsung und Fahrerermüdungswarnungen enthalten.
Now again, guys, for the full breakdown of all the tech, all the features, all the extras, all that sort of stuff on each different Passat, jump on ReDriven.com and check out the cheat sheet. Now, if you guys want to see what an R36 is like when it's being punted properly hard, YouTube 5th gear R36, because that's a video of touring car legend Jason Plato giving one of these things the absolute beans around a racetrack. and it makes for some very impressive viewing. But as you can see, we're not at a racetrack. We're in the situation that these things are going to find themselves 99.9% of the time, which is the suburbs and built-up metropolitan areas. So, what's an R36 like in the real world? Well, first up,
The engine.
okay, this engine. Oh my God. Look, I know so many, I suppose, cars of this size are reverting to smaller capacity turbocharged engines, and things like a Golf R, they feel dramatically faster than this. But there's something about a naturally aspirated V6, especially when they're this good, because this engine is just, it's smooth, it's torquey. Yes, a turbocharged engine is faster, but this somehow feels like old school muscular. Like, it's just got this kind of richness to it. It's just, I love this engine. Like, the way that, like, there's not this, with a turbocharged engine, you've got this big kind of chunky bit of torque in the mid-range, but with this, like, you have to extract the power out of it. So when you floor it, like, it just feeds on, but then it rewards you the harder you push it. It's a masterpiece, this engine. I adore it, until things go wrong with it, which we'll get to a little bit later.
The transmission.
Now, transmission-wise, this is fitted with a dual-clutch transmission, but it is a pretty early incarnation of such a gearbox. And it's not as responsive as you might expect. It's a little bit slow on the shifts, even when it's in sport mode, and it's a little bit clunky around town as well. If this had a manual transmission, this thing would just be an iconic car, but it doesn't, so we've got to deal with that. But look, overall, transmission-wise, it's fine. It's a little underwhelming, but it's fine.
The ride.
Now, ride quality, this car is fitted with KW suspension. Brilliant. Like, it is pretty firm, but it's not harsh. We actually tested the AMG A45 up and down this same road, and it was pretty harsh. You could even tell in the video it was just like, you know, an old horse and cart. This thing, like, yeah, firm, but controlled, and it gives you like this really nice sense of confidence all the time. Excellent for ride quality. Firm, but still excellent.
The handling.
Now, handling-wise, these do get accused of being pretty enthusiastic when it comes to understeer. If you're really punting it properly hard, yeah, it will push, and if it's wet, it will push. But in normal conditions, and even with some spirited driving, if you drive around the understeer, like change your entry angle and change where you're braking and accelerating, you can kind of drive around it. But handling-wise, it's impressive. Like all drive, it's impressive. It will grip for days. But one thing that's disappointing about the handling, and it's not just this car, I feel like it's every Volkswagen product, the steering. It feels like you're driving a gaming console steering wheel rather than an actual car's steering wheel. And even then, it's a gaming console from a few years ago, because there's a real lack of communication. It feels like there's a disconnect between what your hands are doing and what the car does. Obviously, you turn the wheel, the car turns, but there's no feedback, there's no tactility. As wanky as that sounds, as like typical car journalists speak, but this is a performance car, and it should respond like a performance car, and I don't know, the steering leaves a bit to be desired.
The sound.
Now, sounds-wise, there are a few rattles. That's to be, I suppose, expected when the plastics are getting a bit brittle, and there's a lot of them, because there's a lot of interior in here, so yeah, there are a few rattles and weird squeaks and sounds, but engine note makes up for all of that. That sounds so good. And here's the other good thing about the engine, because it's not crazy warp speed fast, it feels like you're going faster than you are. That honestly wasn't that fast. We got up to the speed limit. It's so good.
The other stuff.
Look, overall, I'm really torn on this car because the driving experience is fantastic. It's so enjoyable. It drives exactly like a car like this should. Yes, a manual gearbox would make it a bit more engaging, but that's just not going to happen. It even looks fantastic. It sounds fantastic. It's a beautiful place to be. But I know what's coming up in the what goes wrong section, so I'm torn. I love it, but I also hate it, but I love it. Now, this is where, unfortunately, things start to take a bit of a turn for the worse, because with how enjoyable these are when you flex that right foot, we doubt many owners are actually ever seeing that claimed fuel consumption figure. And with what fuel costs to buy these days, a spirited journey will quickly lighten your wallet. Now, the other thing that might lighten your wallet are the cost of certain parts. Now, I say certain parts because genuine Volkswagen parts, they can be expensive. But if you're open to non-OEM parts, and you should be because quite often they last longer and cost less, you could save some money. Also, you could save yourself some money if you learn to work on these yourself, or if you go to an independent mechanic, because some Volkswagen service centers, they do charge a premium, and it's a premium that's pretty hard to justify. Now, before we get into this heartbreaking section of the video, a massive thank you to Jeremy, our viewer, for lending us his stunning R36, and to Julian and Nick and everyone in the Passat and the R36 owners groups and forums, and all the Volkswagen technicians and mechanics that we spoke to in helping us research this video, because without you guys, we couldn't make these videos. And if you're looking at buying one of these, or you already own one, make sure you join one of these owners groups, because honestly, the amount of information you can get from these guys is astounding. Okay, exterior-wise and across the entire Passat range, the electric windows are known to have some faults, either being really hesitant or just failing altogether. Also across the entire range, the fuel lid door, because it's made of plastic, these can snap off and they can just fail. Next up, the parking brakes can have some issues, either seizing up or not going on or just failing completely. Now, in certain climates, and mainly on wagon models, you can get a bit of rust and corrosion building up around the number plate lights. The LEDs in the taillights can fade and eventually fail. Now, Passat's fitted with the sunroof. Make sure that the sunroof drains have been cleaned out, because the water can build up and eventually leak into the footwells of the car, and your car can end up smelling like wet dog. Yuck. Now, obviously, there's a whole bunch of other stuff that you do need to check out when you're buying not just a Passat, but really any used car, and that can be a daunting process. But to make that a whole lot easier and enjoyable, we've made the ultimate used car buyer's guide. The link is up here and then down there somewhere. Guys, please watch that before you buy any used car, because it could save you a fortune. Now, inside, the most common complaint that we could find was the fact that the headlining tends to sag and become like an upside down parachute, but it's pretty easily fixed, as this owner has done. And also, he's replaced the kind of light colored roof lining with a black roof lining, which really does a great job. It makes the whole car feel a bit more sporty and performancey. It's great. Now, next up, as we mentioned before, the seat bolsters can collapse and get a bit squidgy and gross. The problem is, to fix that can become expensive. Now, across the entire Passat range, some of the soft touch surfaces are known to kind of get a bit bubbly and sort of start coming off. A bit of a problem. Air conditioning compressor failure is a known problem with the age of these things. Next up, electrical gremlins with the key fob are a known and common complaint as well. The problem is, you put it in to start the car, but because this is stuffing up, the car just won't start. There are some complaints or reports of the steering columns locking, like it basically won't unlock when you start the car, so you can't steer the car, and that makes driving it really challenging. In Passats with the standard infotainment systems, the Bluetooth connectivity, the satellite navigation, and just the general goings of the infotainment systems can be an absolute pain. Then there are many complaints about the interiors rattling and creaking and making weird sounds. It can be more apparent on the R36 models too, because they ride on a firmer suspension, and that sort of encourages the brittle plastics to shake loose even more. Just annoying. Now, before we get into mechanically what can go wrong with these, I've got to ask a favour. Can you please hit that like and subscribe button? Honestly, just clicking those two things, it helps us out so much. We'd so appreciate it. Okay, mechanically, what goes wrong with the Passat? Well, look, I'd love to tell you, but I can't, because I'm not a qualified mechanic. But Jim is.
There are about 12 different engine options in this generation of Passat, and a few transmission variants too, so I am going to have to generalise just a little bit here. And the sheer volume of these things sold worldwide means you don't actually have to look too far to find complete horror stories about every possible thing going wrong. The electronic park brake switches can fail, and that can cause the handbrake to get either stuck on or off. Occasionally we see key and ignition switch problems where the key gets stuck in or you can't turn it, and you need to get a VIN-coded barrel to fix that. Excessive oil consumption is really common across all petrol models, and at this age most people are just choosing to live with it and top it up between services rather than spending thousands on actually fixing it. Engine breather or PCV issues can cause lean air fuel ratios and log a fault code. There are some timing chain complications in higher mileage versions, and the V6s, they had a problem with the chain that drives the oil pump. Basically, the bolt holding the gear on just leaves the chat and causes a catastrophic failure. Now, some people did choose to fix that as some sort of preventative maintenance measure, but you've got to take the gearbox out to fix it, which means a small amount of peace of mind costs a lot of bucks. The diesels in these things, well, they suffer from all the usual modern day diesel issues, injector problems, DPF complications, and of course the ever-present EGR complication. And basically the whole inlet system on these just chokes up. And speaking of choking, look, I'm not even going to mention the whole Dieselgate thing. I'm not going to mention Michael Hutchins either, and I'm no toxicologist, but I can say when these things are in the workshop and they are running, they fucking stink. The stink they make is unique to them, and they stink more than any other modern day diesel. The transmissions in these things, well, they do have plenty of problems. The DSG's main complaint is the mechatronics unit, but they have clutch issues well and dual mass flywheel complications which create a horrible rattling sound. Look, any of those problems typically are very expensive to fix. So if the question is, are they reliable? Well, it depends how you look at it. There are plenty of these running around with no problems at all, and some owners are really happy. There's also the ones that have all of the problems. They have oil leaks, they have coolant leaks, they have DSG issues and EGR issues, and have got every fault code known to mankind, and they've been like that for years and they're still running. So I guess in a way that's a sort of kind of reliability.
Okay, so should you buy one? Look, it is such a tough call, but let's start with the standard Passat. No, you should definitely not buy one. Look, yes, they're lovely to drive, they're practical and they exude all the lovely Euro image stuff, but the long list of common issues are only going to get longer, as will the costs in repairing them. Plus, for very similar money, if you want a sedan, just buy a Lexus IS, and if you need a wagon, buy a Mazda 6, because both will do pretty much everything that Passat can do, yet both come with a far superior reputation for reliability and lower maintenance costs. But what about these? Should you buy an R36? Look, I so want to say yes, but like, how committed are you? Because this is a car that's really only for the hardcore enthusiast. Look, there's no denying the R36 is a very special car, and it might go down as a future classic. But like many classics, it requires its fair share of love and care. And look, if you're happy to provide the levels of commitment and attention needed, and your wallet is deep enough to justify the expenses involved, yeah, sure, look, why not buy one? But there are a few other cars that offer a very similar set of skills that are just less risky. A Subaru Liberty or Legacy with either the 6-cylinder or the 4-cylinder turbo, look, it lacks the Euro cool of the R36, but it does fit the bill. But then again, they do have their own maintenance issues, but they're a worthy alternative. Plus, the Subarus can be had with a manual transmission. But if you want something really unique, and it needs to be fast, and it needs to be a wagon, have you considered these? The Mitsubishi Legnum VR4, the Toyota Crown Athlete, or my personal pick, the Nissan Stagia, which all add turbochargers to their 6-cylinder power plants, and all of them tend to prioritise sending the power to the rear wheels, not the fronts. Just saying. Which then brings us to the question, do you still buy a Passat or an R36 or one of the other alternatives? Let us know in the comments. See you next time. Now, practicality up front wise, you've got an excellent size. Sorry about that. Fantastic. You've got matte pockets on the backs of the doors, good sized door bins. Back of the doors. Jump on YouTube, which you're probably already on, and sorry, clear your throat. Make sure you do that. Jesus. Okay.
Button fails basically, and it can get. The electronic park brake, it can fail, and then